Hello everyone, I'm Ben Johnson and this is the Perpetual Chess Podcast. On Perpetual Chess, I have weekly conversations with the chess world's best players, promoters, and educators about their lives, careers, current projects, and best practices. Perpetual Chess is brought to you through the generosity of its Patreon and PayPal supporters. For more information, go to perpetualchesspod.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. We're here for the third live interview of the day in Nashville, Tennessee, with the legendary chess coach, executive director of the National Scholastic Chess Foundation, coach of Hunter, just chess author, wrote a great book many years ago called Best Lessons of a Chess Coach, and more recently, last year, co-authored Great Moves Learning Chess Through History, which I've been enjoying immensely in preparation for this interview. Sunil Weeramantry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ben. Great to be here.
So, Sunil, we've got to start at the beginning because we go way back. I went to a chess program called Masterman, which also has alumni such as the Shahadis and some other masters have come out of it along the years. And our schools were rivals over the years, Masterman and Hunter. Tangled many times trying to win national championships, and sometimes you guys came out on top and sometimes we did. But for me, and I think for a lot of people who will be familiar with your writing and your coaching and all that you've done for chess, your coaching is sort of where the thread begins. And we know that you're from Sri Lanka, but I, at least personally, haven't seen anything about how you got to the U.S. and how you took up chess coaching.
I took a slow boat over here, Ben.
Did you really?
No, actually, it was kind of a long way here. I was born in Sri Lanka. I lived there till I was 11 years old. And my father got stationed in Geneva, Switzerland. So I did all my secondary education in Switzerland. Then I went to law school in England. And then I ended up over here bumming around and playing chess.
Oh, so I already learned something. I didn't know that you'd gone to law school.
Yeah, I did not practice as a lawyer. In fact, I didn't finish my final exam, but it was a very important and formative experience in my life. And I think there's a strong connection, actually, between what I'm doing now and, what I did when I was in law school. So,
what's the connection?
Well, that's where I really began to see the connections between chess and other disciplines, especially law. I saw a very strong connection between chess and the law. And so that got me thinking about incorporating chess into the regular curriculum, particularly to highlight a thinking process that is involved. And so that's what really pointed me in the direction that I'm going in now.
And so how'd you end up in New York?
My father was working for the Security Council in the United Nations.
So you moved to New York at what age?
Around 20, the early 20s. But then I put in for immigration, officially immigrated in 83.
Okay. And you were playing chess the whole time, or?
Attempting to, yes.
Yeah, we've played a few times, so I know that you know your way around the chessboard. It's been a long time, but I know you've got a plus score against me. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can't be too modest because that'll make me feel bad. So you played chess all along, and then you saw an opportunity and you had a desire to teach. So once you thought about that, what was the next step?
Well, I responded to an ad at Hunter seeking a chess teacher, and I had done some private instruction, mainly one-on-one, but never really in a group. So I walked into the principal's office, and he said, "So you teach chess?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "All right, follow me." Took me to a 6th grade classroom, stopped the class that was in progress, told the classroom teacher, "Give me everyone who doesn't know anything about chess." Rounded up about a dozen kids, turned to me and said, "You have 15 minutes, teach them."
And I guess you did okay.
I guess I did okay, yeah.
That's amazing because we've talked before. We've had several well-known and accomplished chess teachers here on the show, and we've talked before about how chess teaching doesn't necessarily come naturally to chess players. So Did you feel, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, do you feel like you were a good communicator right off the bat?
I didn't know that until I started doing it. And then I saw that I was able to break things down into a fairly simple form and explain them. And I think that's what a lot of chess players don't do. I mean, if you just ask a chess player questions, why are you doing it? So, oh, we're doing it because we do it. And they don't really break it down. And breaking it down into its simplest form is an art in itself. And somehow I seem to have a facility for doing that in a way that people understood. And so I realized this is something that I could really pursue.
Excellent. And we've got to get more details on this because it was at the time that you started this program or had a hand in starting this program at Hunter, chess programs were so rare. So do you have an idea what gave the principal the idea to establish a chess program?
Well, Hunter was a laboratory school that was interested in exploring innovative teaching methods and subjects and so forth. So it seemed like a good fit. It had a very good reputation nationally for doing that. And so why not experiment? And I made a good case for why it should be included. And the point here was that we were not seeking to produce chess players, simply to introduce the critical thinking or higher order thinking skills, as people like to say today, at a much younger age than is typically done in schools. Because in schools, you don't engage in this kind of thinking until you start the sciences. And so you are waiting maybe 5th grade, 6th grade, middle school level, really. So why not introduce, these thinking skills at a younger age, and everybody stands to benefit.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, I lived in New York for many years, and Hunter is has an incredible reputation in the New York school world. I think is that you have to be in the top 1% of test scores in order to even have hopes of getting admitted.
Yes, it is a public school, but it's a public school that's open through open examination, and so you have to test in. And there are 2 entry points. There is an entry point in kindergarten and one in 7th grade. That's it. At one period of time, we used to take in a pre-K. There was a pre-K for about 10 years. So I did have the experience of teaching chess in a pre-K, class. But then with funding and so forth, the pre-K got cut and the entry point became kindergarten. So yes, it was a good experience all around.
Yeah, and for listeners, just to connect it to the current chess world, I mean, there are many master level players who've come out of the Hunter program, but Macaulay Peterson of the Full English Breakfast and many, working for Chess Base and has been on Perpetual Chess is also a Hunter alum. So there's proof that they produce, upstanding citizens such as Macaulay. So shout out to Macaulay. So did you have another job at this point when you started to get work teaching at Hunter?
No, actually, I was quite unemployed. I was much to the dismay of my parents, and I was, really the black sheep of the family, so to speak, because it was expected that I would go to law school and be an outstanding lawyer. So my father was quite upset with me. When I first came to the States, I really had no idea of geographic distance. I would pick up a magazine and I would see, chess tournament in Minnesota, $500 first prize. And I thought, this weekend I'll go to Minnesota, you see. Had absolutely no idea of distance. And I was playing around, just playing tournaments and doing some teaching. And then I got lucky because I won the New York States. And that was in 75. And my main rival, the competition in the tournament was former world junior champion Julio Kaplan. And I happened to win the game. And that's got everything started, really.
So do you feel like having that title was critical, or was it the prize, or what was it about that result that...
No, it certainly wasn't the prize.
Okay. I didn't think so, but you never know.
But the title went a long way. I mean, people seem to feel that was a big deal. New York State champion.
I think so, yeah.
Far more important than FIDE master or anything like that. Somehow they seem to relate to that. Oh, you must be good if you won the New York State. So... and in fact, actually, that's really what launched my teaching career, because I was playing in the local club, and the club recommended, someone had called the club and asked for a chess teacher. And I hadn't done any teaching actually before then. Club recommended me because I happened to be a state champion. And the person, the name of the person who had called the club was a certain Jarecki.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, Carol Jarecki. Yeah.
Right. And the parents called me and said, we have this child who is quite, interested in chess. Are you willing to teach him? I said, absolutely not. I don't teach children. And
wrong answer.
But they were persistent. They just insisted on coming over. I couldn't really say no. So the kid came over to my place. I played a few games with him, and then I was thinking, this kid is way better than I ever was at that age. And so that's what happened. John was my first student.
Excellent. And at what point did you start to think, oh, maybe this can be a career?
Well, I was never really sure about it. In fact, I was quite concerned because what happens when your students dry up? You have 2 or 3 students and they all, quit playing chess, or they lose interest. And then I realized that that'll really never be the case, because there's always new kids coming into kindergarten, so if I can't get a few people interested, then I shouldn't be doing this anyway.
Mm-hmm. And now your program's in 70 schools. Is that count current?
The foundation in the New York area, yeah, we are in about 70 schools. But I like to be in the classroom, so I still teach at Hunter. Well, not so much anymore, but I run the program, and I started that in 79. Then Spire approached me and asked me to set up their program from scratch. So I'm the director of the Spire Chess program as well. So those are the 2 programs that I have a physical presence in the classroom.
And is your business structured as a profit or a nonprofit?
It's a nonprofit.
Okay.
It's a nonprofit. We incorporated as a C3 back in 91. And we got our final determination from the IRS 2 years later. Okay,
so it took you many years to figure out, okay, I should go the nonprofit route.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've had Jay Stallings, who again is in the audience, who of course has a nonprofit. And we've also had some, there's a lot of sort of sole proprietors types, such as myself, who run their own businesses but don't necessarily have people working for them. But then also we've had chess teachers who have for-profit. So it's a topic of particular interest to me, like what goes into the decision when to form a nonprofit. So what happened with your business where you decided that would be the best way to go?
Well, we felt that, incorporating as a nonprofit allowed us to fundraise and do programs during the school day for the children who may not elect to do chess as an after-school activity. But when you do something during the school day, you cannot charge them for it, so you have to go and provide that service. And sometimes the school is in a position to pay, sometimes the school's not. There have been cases where I got tax-levied funds for that because school districts approved a line item budget for chess. But it had to be a not-for-profit because otherwise I couldn't have raised the money to actually go in and, do the teaching during the day.
Oh, okay. That's a good reason. So before we get back to your teaching, one thing that I've just realized that we neglected to get into is, so we know that you came to the U.S. and made your way from Sri Lanka to England to the U.S. and were already a strong chess player. But what was your introduction to chess as a child? How did you get into it to begin with?
Oh, my grandfather wanted to spend time with me. And his idea of spending quality time was to teach me how to play chess. So he taught me how to play chess and proceeded to beat me every single day for at least a year and a half. And, and taught me a lot of bad things that I had to undo a few years later.
So he had like a street chess style or just sort of his own ideas?
He was an amateur chess player who had a couple of chess books. He just loved to play, but it was great. It was a really a good bonding experience. And that also, strengthened my belief that there was a real place for this game. It's just the way it transcended generations and so forth. So.
And once your interest was piqued, how were you able to get better advice than you were getting from your grandfather?
Oh, well, actually, it started when I joined the Geneva Chess Club at the age of 30. And I had lived there for about a year, and I didn't know that there was a chess club. I was playing in the school chess club, but that was kind of easy. And then I found out about the club. I joined the club, and then got good pretty quickly from age of 13 to I was about 2,300 at 15.
Oh, wow.
And I won the what they call the absolute championship of the Canton of Geneva, which had all the past champions and various qualification criteria, final round robin of 8 players, and I won all 7 games. So that was when I was 15 years old. And so I was actually doing extremely well. And then my parents stopped me playing chess. So they confiscated my chess set. Wow. So told me I cannot go to the club and all that. And so, then I just played off and on since then.
So how did you take that when your parents pulled the rug out from under you?
In our part of the world, you don't fight it, right? Uh-huh. You just have to grin and bear it. You accept it. I mean, no, of course I wasn't happy, but I didn't get to play a single game of chess for 2 years.
Wow. And reaching the level of 2,300 at the age of 15 and doing it in just 2 years, that's impressive even now. But back then, that was, without tactics trainers and without, YouTube videos. I mean, it was pretty unprecedented.
There was nothing. There were no books. The Batsford books started coming out in the early 1970s. You had like an old edition of Modern Chess Openings. I think I had the 10th edition. That was about all I had. Even in French, you didn't have very strong, very good chess books. I mean, in German, yes, in Russian, yes, but they weren't translated or they weren't available to us. So there was nothing. So the only way that I got better was to go and play blitz at the club.
Okay.
So you used to go on Saturdays, dollar in, you win 2 games, you pick up the $2, and and the winner stays. You play 3-man pool, and
there were some players that were able to give.
There were some very, very influential people in my chess career that actually took an interest in me and helped me, and so I really owe them a lot for having done that.
Okay, and so then you make your way to. So getting back to Hunter, at some point, you're a strong chess player, but you've got to figure out what to teach. I mean, you're doing these classes and there's hardly any materials. I mean, there were chess books, but they were, I remember from when I was a kid, I feel like they didn't cover the whole spectrum of chess ability the way that they do now, where you have books like the Steps books and like Coach Jay's books. So what did you,
right?
What's that?
Burning
Yeah,
pants.
exactly. So what did you teach the kids?
Well, what I figured out early on was that the content was not as important as the process. Because for what I was trying to do, which was to teach them how to think, so I use what I call a set position approach. I just take an interesting position and we'd dissect it, we'd analyze it, up, back to front, inside out, and sometimes we would go through like a whole period doing nothing other than analyzing one position. And then I would bounce questions off of each other. If you tell me, well, I think this is good, and I take your question, bounce it off somebody else. Well, why do you think he's saying that? And it just sort of came very naturally, and the more I did it, then I started to see a certain way of doing things. And at one point, some people thought I was being heretical because I wasn't showing games. I was just analyzing a position, and they were not even playing. But the point was to get the process across, and I think I succeeded.
Yeah, I think so too. So definitely, I mean, you've worked with a lot of strong players, but what about like the more beginner type level? Were you doing that with like kids who barely know what a pin is and stuff like that?
Or? Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not, nobody came sort of, full-fledged from the, I had to take an interest in everything, including how the knight moves, absolute basic moves. And so that's when I started thinking about the best order in which to teach the pieces. The conventional wisdom at the time was that you should do the pawn game. And in fact, I recall in the early 1980s, even US Chess published something called Pawn and Queen and and in between. And you started with the pawn game. And this never made any sense to me at all. But it took a while to crystallize my ideas and so forth. And then once I created the Chess in Education Committee for the US Chess, and we started doing workshops around the country. And then I started presenting papers, and now it's sort of accepted that, you shouldn't start with the pawn. But my thinking at the time was, here's a game of rules. And what's the logic in starting to teach this game with the most illogical piece of all?
Right.
So it just didn't make any sense to me. And so, you do what conforms to the rules, and you add, the pieces that don't later on. And in fact, that's what chess is about, isn't it? I mean, if you want to be really good, you have to break the rules. But,
yeah.
But you better know the rules first.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we don't tell our students that right away.
No, of course not. No.
Yeah, they have to find that out later. So along the way, you also started to do some writing. So you wrote Best Lessons of a Chess Coach, which a lot of chess coaches think very highly of. And at the time, again, there weren't as many intermediate level books. So what made you decide to go into the lucrative business of chess writing?
Oh, yes. I am still counting my royalties.
Yes, I'm sure.
What was interesting was that, so I used to give a lot of lectures, and the way this book came into existence was that a friend of mine who's actually is my co-author, Ed UCB, he followed me around for, a year and a half, and he taped my lectures, and then he gave me transcripts. And he said, this is kind of interesting. Why don't we do something with this? So we sifted through, a whole bunch of tapes, and then picked, 10 or 12 and tried to put them together in some form. And so I remember when I first took it to the publisher, the publisher was Random House the first time around. And the editor told me, this book is too long. And maybe we can, we can shorten it a little, take out some of these wrong answers that you have in there and everything. And I looked horrified, and I told him, you really don't get it, do you? Because, obviously the point is, you get so much more mileage out of the wrong answers. And that's something I learned through years of teaching, that rather than tell somebody, what to do, if somebody tells you what they think, and then you can correct that, it made the point much more forcefully. So that's why I kept that format in the book. And, all the feedback I've gotten over the years has been very positive, as people felt that there was dialogue and there was discussion, rather than just, being, a dry presentation.
Yeah, that's my impression of it as well, and I've seen it recommended by many coaches over the years. So,
but you should know that hopefully I will be able to finish this, but but I'm working on a 25th anniversary edition.
Oh, excellent. Well, yeah, because I think it's out of print, correct?
It's out of print. But you know what's amazing? So I've rewritten 4 chapters, keeping the original format and everything. And I have to tell you, when you look at something, 25 years later and you think, wow, why did everybody say it's so good?
Right.
It could be so much better.
Yeah. Is it the chess moves or the presentation or...
No, it is how tight something is, in terms of, the ideas and how many tangents you take off on, and are the central themes clear enough, or could they be, better, clarified? And, so I like the rewrite. I hope I get to finish it.
Yeah. Well, I think any content producer, be they a writer or a podcast host or anything else, they can understand, always wanting to tinker, just being like, oh, it could have been better. But at some point you just have to let go, but at least you're getting one more pass. So we'll look forward to that, and a new generation of chess enthusiasts can check it out, along with your new book, Great Moves, Learning Through Chess History, which was co-authored by Alan Abrams and Robert McClellan, just to give full credit. And this is just a beautiful book with just incredible detail. So what's the story of how this book came into existence?
Well, this started actually as an idea of Alan's to present stories about chess history. He had been experimenting this with one of the programs he had in the South Bronx, and he brought me in to talk to those kids, and then he showed me the manuscript, and he needed somebody to give some annotations to the games and so forth, which I did, and we had a manuscript, but it didn't really go anywhere because it wasn't in a form that made any sense, and so we shelved the whole project until 5 years ago or so, 4 years ago, I think, when I brought Robert McClellan on, when I hired him as the communications director for NSCF. And I happened to show him this material, and he said, this is very interesting. This really, we could package it like this. And, so I said, okay, let's go for it. Let's see what happens. And then we had to, as we did it, we realized all the shortcomings, and then we had to rewrite some sections and so forth. And then, we saw certain things were missing, and where exactly should we position it. And I felt that, this obviously is for maybe on a slightly lower level than Best Lessons. I think, when I wrote Best Lessons, I was targeting an audience of about 1,400 to 2,000. That was my target audience. And I think I hit that too, because the comments I have gotten over the years have been, very positive in that regard, but even a little bit higher, a little bit lower. This one I thought, I want to tie it into some of the workshops I do around the country, and so has somebody who only has the knowledge of how to move the pieces, that they would have something that they could follow. And so it's rather an ambitious project, Ben, because what I set out to do was to use the history. So there were really 2 timelines. There's the chronology moving forward, and there's the instruction that gains in complexity, as we move forward. So we decided that we'll focus on the period that ends with Paul Morphy. And then where to start, and so we went back to about 1485, and so that's really the meat of the content. But then it didn't seem to make sense not to have anything about the previous history. So of course I summarized the 2,000 years in 10 pages or something like that, right? But just to set the stage and then pick up the stories from there. And as I was doing it, now I realize the importance, because as I'm doing a lot more work in the curriculum, what I find is that classroom teachers are much more inclined to take the subject of chess more seriously if we provide points of intersection with the regular curriculum. Mm-hmm. And to me, this is the first logical point of intersection, because chess and history or chess and social studies, is an obvious first point of intersection. I have a couple of other plans, with other points of intersection, which I want to try and complete. So that's why it went over well. But I was also hoping to hit the crossover market, and just have people who are interested in history know a little bit of chess, but maybe they'll skip all the chess that's in it, and just read the stories.
The elusive chess crossover market. Yeah. But Sunil, whether or not people outside of the chess world pick up this book, I mean, the chess players and classroom teachers will benefit greatly for it. I mean, there's just so much detail about sort of, classic players like Greco. You guys have fleshed out so many details, to Philidor, and then even to, as you get to Paul Morphy, as you say, where you guys leave things. I mean, there's details about the opera game, probably most famous chess game of all time. And you guys have so much more detail than I'd known about that previously, because as a chess teacher, of course, I've shown this game, hundreds of times, like every other chess teacher. And every once in a while, the kids stump me with a good question, such as, wasn't it rude for them to be playing chess in the middle of an opera? And
it certainly was.
Yeah, right? I thought it was, but I never knew the details. And then there you have it in the details and another question that kids have asked me that I was like, that's a good question, is why do they have a chess set at the opera? And I said, and that also is answered in the book. So kudos to you for answering these long-held mysteries.
Well, thank you. Doing the research was absolutely fascinating, and we did come across, little gems, certainly, for example, learning that Thomas Jefferson sold his copy of L'Analyse des Échecs by Philidor, and to raise money before he left for France as the envoy to France, to Paris, and that it was bought by James Monroe. It's been very interesting.
So what sources did you guys use to uncover all this information?
Well, some of it are primary sources, and from newspaper, articles at the time and so forth. But the challenge was to separate fact from fiction when it came to Morphy, because so much has been written on Morphy, but a lot of it was fiction, and it was the Francis Parkinson Keyes, right, who wrote the. But we found that the truth was certainly interesting enough. The fact was interesting enough that we could leave the fiction out, and it was still interesting. So that's what we did.
Yeah, and it's for chess teachers listening. It's a beautifully presented book. It's got, in addition to a lot of historical detail, it also has really nicely presented puzzles, so it can be used as sort of handout material as well. So definitely, I strongly recommend it to anyone.
Thank you. I just want to give a shout out to Mongoose, because as the publisher, they were extremely proactive and listened to us. The book was presented, with plenty of white space, good binding, good quality paper, and so forth. Yeah, they did a really nice production. Yeah,
and of course, I know that it sounds like you're pretty busy as it is. I mean, you're busy with the National Scholastic Chess Foundation. You're busy with your nonprofit, helping Hikaru with his career. You've got a lot going on, but of course I couldn't help but wonder when you left things off at Morphy. I wondered, is there going to be a sequel someday?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's very tempting, but I there are a couple of other directions I want to pursue first, and a lot more has been written from Steinitz on, so I don't think they need someone else. But the earlier part was not easily accessible. You had to go and find some scholarly, tome somewhere. We wanted to make the history of chess a lot more accessible, and I think I succeeded.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so Sunil, we've only got a limited amount of time, and we have so many topics to discuss. So I just mentioned your stepson Hikaru, and I'm old enough to remember when Asuka, who also beat me in a tournament game. Yeah, I tried to find the game, not the actual game, but I tried to find the tournament record online. But unfortunately, I think it happened a little bit before USCF picks up the records. But I have the distinct memory of I'm 9 years older than Asuka, and I have the distinct memory of playing either Asuka or Hikaru when they were probably 6 or 7, and I think it was at a U.S. Open because we both went to a lot of U.S. Opens in those years. And what I remember most is that they were very small and that they stood up the whole game, but still beat me. So, but I wanted to hear what it was like teaching them, because Asuka became a master, and of course everyone listening knows what became of Hikaru. So did you think that they were going to achieve great things? Or
it's very interesting. I of course met my wife through chess because and Oscar was the common factor because it was at the national elementary school championships, and Oscar was playing in the kindergarten, and he won the kindergarten, and a mutual friend introduced us and so forth. And I didn't know him till then, but I remember talking to him during the game, and I was sort of impressed that he knew where to find material, like how to research and things like that. And of course Oscar became so good. In fact, he became so good that I did not want Hikaru to play chess, and I tried to push Hikaru away from it, and it had the opposite effect. But I was just concerned that Hikaru might not be able to live up to his brother. And Oscar has a record that'll never be broken. It's 13 national championships.
Wow.
So, he still plays online. He doesn't play seriously, in tournaments anymore. But I think he wouldn't be upset if I divulge the fact that he gets kind of upset and furious if he loses a blitz game to a 2500.
Oh wow! Okay.
And the other day he was quite dismayed. He said, "Dad, my blitz rating has just dropped below 2500."
Wow!
I didn't know he cared.
Yeah. And he's only a year older than Hikaru, is that correct?
About a year and 3/4.
Okay. Yeah, because I just saw they were born 1 year apart, which my memory was of them a wider
and
gap.
87, but it's a year and 3/4.
Okay.
So like February and December.
Mm-hmm.
But and then Hikaru, what can I say? I mean, as a chess player, it's just been great for me because of Hikaru, I have been able to get to know the best players in the world. I can, socialize with them and so forth, and they probably would not have given me the time of day. But it's been great. Yeah.
So yeah, you've gotten to travel the world. You go to some of Hikaru's tournaments when you can. So tell us a little more what it's like. I'm sure you're having dinner with legendary chess players and seeing all the behind the scenes stuff. So what?
Oh, absolutely. I remember one dinner in Zurich with Gelfand was sitting here across to my left, and Swidler was across the way, and Kramnik was next to him, and so forth. And we started talking about, there was a match that no one has ever heard of, where it was the USSR versus the USA at the under 16 level, because there was a team from the Soviet Union at the time that actually visited the US. It had Kramnik on board 4, Swidler on board 10, right? Guess who was on board 1? So a team with Kramnik on 4, Swidler on 10. It had Rublevsky, other strong players. But who could have played 1? A grandmaster who is still active today.
Morozevich?
No, he was not on the team. Nope. You won't guess. Okay, so I'll give you a clue. He has now moved to another country.
Sokolov?
No, good guess. No, it was Yakov.
Oh, okay. I was on the right track.
Yakov was board 1. Kramnik was board 4.
Wow.
So we were talking about this, and and Kramnik was giving me all these inside stories about what it was like to be on that team and who managed that team and what restrictions were placed on them, as players, what they were allowed to do, not to do, which TV they could watch, which they could not watch. I mean, things like you would never find out unless, it's just
right.
Very interesting too.
I mean, those are the kind of details that listeners of this podcast are always eager to hear. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who wish they could have been a fly on the wall, for a dinner like that. So we've got to unpack, Sunil. It strikes me that you're uniquely qualified. One common theme that we return to a lot on this podcast is the nature of talent in chess. So, as someone who's taught thousands of kids over the years, and seen people who can never grasp the nuances of how the pawn moves, ranging that level to someone who goes on to become top 10 in the world as Hikaru has. So what do you think is the most important in terms of what's most predictive of chess talent?
That is a very difficult question. Ben, if I had the answer to that question, I'd be a millionaire.
Well, I don't know.
I would be training all these awesome players.
I mean, if you're not the one to answer, I don't know who I can ask.
No, but I think, that there really isn't any one answer. I think there are different ways to the top, and you can get there by dint of hard work. You can get there, just through a lot of play and, practice. Like Hikaru, I remember an article Gelfand wrote once and said that Hikaru is the first of a new breed of chess players that just don't read anything and don't and don't study the classics. But they play interminable number of games online, and that's their, the accumulation of their experience, and that has worked too. So it's hard to say. I think the most important ingredient, though, is passion. Mm-hmm. And whatever it is that you do, be it chess or anything else, if you don't have the passion, at some point you will give up. So you have passion and self-confidence and perseverance. And knowing, just being open to new ideas. Because if you think you know everything, or the moment you think you know everything, that's when you stop. I remember, one bit of advice that I gave Hikaru was that not to become conservative as he got older, because what I had noticed was that everybody was becoming, more conservative in that I guess people felt that they had a reputation to protect. So your rating goes up, then you're not willing to experiment because you're worried that you'll lose some stupid game and then you'll look bad in the eyes of the world. So I remember telling Hikaru, don't ever be frightened to experiment, and play whatever you want. Whenever you want. And of course, you know what he did. And he took it to the extreme.
Yeah.
And when he told me the night before at dinner in Copenhagen, I'm going to play Queen H5 against Sasikaran tomorrow. And I said, over my dead body, and he looked at me and, he realized I was, sort of upset. So he wisely dropped the subject, but then next morning at breakfast there was that look in his eye, and I knew, I just knew that was not, I wasn't gonna talk. He said, "Yeah, I've thought about it, Dad. I'm gonna do it."
That's very funny. That's great. So, and you've mentioned it. So I wanted to pin down some details because you've mentioned in a prior interview many years ago that you didn't teach Hikaru and Asuka that much. Do you stand by that statement?
Yeah, probably. But what I did was I created the proper environment, for them to be able to flourish, and I think that's very important. I certainly didn't spend as much time with Hikaru as I should have. In those days, you didn't have the computers, but you had those handheld computers like the Excalibur and the Novag and stuff like that. What Hikaru would do, being a sharp little kid, he would play a game. He would write everything down, meticulous handwriting. He'd write it down, but he figured out that the computer always did the same thing. So then the next game, he would invert colors and he would play the other side. And then he would learn one more move. And then he'd invert it again. And he gave me these reams of papers. I feel guilty that I haven't really looked at all of them.
Wow.
Never really went through them. So in that sense, I didn't spend a lot of time with him. But we went to tournaments, and Carolyn certainly did her part, because there was no way I could leave and take him to Europe to play, in international tournaments, to give him that opportunity. So, she took him around and, was very instrumental in his, in those days we didn't have IM and GM norm tournaments. I had to send him to Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, it was a lot different, even though it wasn't that long ago.
Right.
And do you think that going to Europe made a big difference in his chess development?
Absolutely. There was no way he would not have made that title if he hadn't gone and played those tournaments.
Well, I think he would have made it eventually. But your point is well taken. Yeah, we're lucky to now have some events where you can get norms here in the U.S. as well. Plus, just with computers being so readily available, you can just become so strong that it's almost becoming.
Yeah, you can be anywhere and you can do it, and it's amazing what these kids have now.
Yeah. So Sunil, our listeners always like to hear book recommendations. So we've other than your own, of course. So we've talked at length about your books, but what other books do you find yourself using for your teaching, or is there anything that you find that you consider a favorite?
Well, in terms of tactics, there's so many databases available now which are very good, and you just continue to work through them. Chess.com, ChessBase, they have, everybody has a really good database. So collection of books in that regard maybe not quite as important. In terms of beginners, absolute beginners, I would say go back to Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess. Just read it from cover to cover, back to front, and you're going to be, a strong, high beginning level, low intermediate, just from that. And, there's no need to reinvent the wheel when something works, But of the more recent books that I find interesting, I find Jacob Agard's books very interesting. On as far as endgames go, I always liked John Nunn. Mm-hmm. I thought John really explained things very well, and not so complicated that you lose yourself in variations. So, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, those two, Jakob Agard in particular, but John Nunn also has been coming up a lot lately. So do you get a chance to work on your chess at all these days? You play in Gibraltar, right? So this is 2018. I had the most miserable tournament I think I ever had. I had 5 consecutive really bad tournaments. But in 2017, Gibraltar, I played very well. I scored 5.5 out of 10 in the Masters, and that was a really strong performance and everything. But I'm not sure what's happened, Ben. It's not that I'm trying to. Well, first of all, I cannot tank my rating because I have a floor, right,
and they won't let me go below the floor. But I think my FIDE has actually dropped below 2,000, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. So it's about 200 and almost 300 points in about a year and a half, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. So I'm a little upset about that. So I'm hoping I'll get to play a little bit more.
So, yeah, and again, anyone listening can understand that. We all have slumps, so I can certainly relate to that. But in terms of evaluating the quality of the play, so there's the rating difference, but is there like a common theme in what's happening in your games that didn't used to happen before? Or?
I think I'm just getting tired. You know, I seem to be making the mistakes in the fourth hour of play.
Right.
You know, and maybe the thinking is not quite as sharp, you know, after, you know, an extended period of time. That's the only thing I can think of, really, because the rest of it seems to be fine.
Yeah, chess is uniquely unforgiving in terms of you can't make one bad move. So I'm not breaking any news here, but if the overall quality of your game may not be that much worse, but if you just throw in one or two real stinkers, that just ruins everything. So,
right.
Yeah, and I think I know when John Watson came on the podcast, he was saying that was what he was struggling with. He felt like he could still slug it out, and for the most part, play to a level that he could hold his head high about, but then he would just have these couple moves that you wish you could take back.
Yes.
Yeah, and they can drive you crazy if you let them. So don't let them drive you crazy, Sunil.
I'll try. And you don't have to worry. You have a few more years before you get to that stage.
First I have to get my kids old enough where I have time to crack open a chess book. But yeah, I look forward to hopefully. My rating's not what it used to be either. So I hope to make another run. So Sunil, we have like just a couple more minutes. So one other topic I wanted to address since we're here is just we're at nationals. Do you even know how many national titles your teams have won?
You know, I started counting them the other day because it's probably useful information to have, but it's definitely over 150, probably closer to 200. So I'm just talking first places in nationals.
So this is individual and team?
Individual and team, yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And you've revealed all the secrets you're going to reveal. There's no more information forthcoming about how we can mimic this success. Or at least we'll tune in for the 25th anniversary book edition.
That'll be wonderful. I'd love to come and talk more.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Sunil.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ben.
Sure.
Thanks for having me.
The new Perpetual Chess theme music is courtesy of Geert Vanderveld. Special shout out to him. I also want to thank everyone who supports the podcast. That includes people who tell their friends about it, people who write positive reviews on Apple Podcasts, and most of all, those who have donated to support the show. I spend about 5 hours a week on each episode, and even though I love doing it, it can be hard to find the time. Without the support of my Patreon and PayPal Perpetual Chess partners, the show would not be possible. They are Adam Ralph, Adam Vrancoulge, Adrian Gutierrez, Andres Krizdewa. I hope I did okay there, Andres, on your name. Alex Pejas, Chris Wainscott, Chad Hilton, Chris Lott, Christopher Wood, Coach Jay's Chess Academy, Chris Flanagan, Daniel Naylor, Daniel Schaefer, Gary Andrews, Greg Shahadi, James Bonastia, Jason Dunbar, Jennifer Valens, Jeffrey Martello, John Fernandez, Jen Shahadi, Jen Scream, Jerry Wells, John Thompson, Johnny McMenamin, Kelly Palmer, Krishna Gopala Krishnan, Lorraine Dore, Matthew Passy, Macaulay Peterson, Matthew Tedesco, Pascal Charbonneau, Paul Swaney, Peter Lux, Peter Merrifield, Randy Tempo, Ricky Grijalva, Rob Lazorchak, Robert Steiner, Tatyev Abrahamian, Thomas Stanix, Thomas Tachenko, Tim Seymour, Timothy Ha, Todd Bryant, Tony Rotello, Victor Vrancoul, Zhao Cheng, and Zhivko Stoyanov. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'll be back next week with another great